Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I am talking to Dr. Michelle Gordon, who is a general surgeon actually, and we're going to be talking all things about how high performers can keep achieving without stress and overwhelm and all the things that hit us, even doctors. And also we're going to talk a lot about menopause. And before you meet Michelle, she was a burnt out multi-million dollar single specialty practice owner with her general surgery. And through the years, with increasing corporate takeovers, she herself then became very overwhelmed and burnt out and unfulfilled. And, it's just like, how can this be when you're sort of living the dream? But, life just gets you down. So Michelle gave the best years of her life to medicine, but freedom came when she realized that it was actually time to move on. She discovered that suffering is actually optional. And we're going to be talking today about how she then continued to be a high performer and now how she helps other people without all of that overwhelm and burnout. So welcome to my program, Dr. Michelle.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's just tap into this whole concept before we start talking menopause and before we start talking about, well, how do we actually do that? Let's tap back into your journey then to, here you are, a young, bright girl. You then go off and do medicine and you think, oh my gosh, I'm living the dream. I'm going to be a doctor for my life. I'm going to be professional at that. Doctors don't get burnt out. Doctors don't struggle in that way, surely. What has your journey been like to where you are today?
Well, it's really interesting because I decided when I was 5 that I had to be a doctor. And it was this subconscious program that ran and ran and ran. And I tried to do other things. And I ended up going to medical school at age 31. And even the story of medical school is quite a manifestation story, because I went to my interview and they waitlisted me. And I finally got a seat 5 days before class started. And I just happened to live really close to the school. And so it's been a lot of that sort of thing that's happened in my life. And I was really surprised that I ended up with surgery. I thought I was going to do something in pediatrics or maybe internal medicine. And then as I look back at as I was going through residency, I was in the operating room as much as I possibly could be. So I ended up in the operating room and I ended up doing general surgery. And I didn't do a specialty because since I entered medical school at 31, by the time I finished my residency, I was 40 and I needed to start earning. And I had a 12-year-old, so it was time to start earning. And so I got this job, and it was great. They paid me really well. It was the most money I'd ever made. But nobody prepared me for the politics of medicine. And I've never been really good at navigating that because I'm on the kind of neurodivergent. So I really don't have a filter and I got myself into a lot of trouble. And then as medicine increasingly became corporate, it was really hard to maintain a solo practice with integrity. It was really the corporate medicine didn't really want us around, and I just didn't feel it anymore. And I started looking back at my life and what was making me happy, and I realized that it just wasn't what I wanted to do anymore, and it was time to let it go. It was hard. It was a really hard decision.
Would be an incredibly hard decision when you know how hard it is to get through medical school, and particularly in the US, the cost of that in itself, particularly when you already had a child to raise as well. So doing it, as a woman with a child at a later age than the cohort going through, I'm assuming, and then to go through this whole experience, and then after the journey going, oh, you know what, maybe this isn't where I should be full time. I think that would just be such a huge decision. Isn't that sad though, that in one way, it's great that you've now moved on and you've got so much to give and share, but also so sad that, the politics of it, or just the way medicine actually works, or the way hospital works, it actually, is it the legislation? Is it the bureaucracy? Is it the, defensive based practice? Is it just the personalities? What sort of things make it just overwhelming?
I think there's a few things in America, especially back in the 80s. There was a lot of talk about business practices that doctors had and whether they were ethical or not. And any business will, let's say I affiliate with you and I sell your program, and then you're going to pay me back something, right?
Yeah.
And so what was happening in America is that doctors were referring to each other and paying each other because that's normal business practice.
Yeah.
And a whole commission came around. It's called the Stark Commission. And they decided that that was illegal and that doctors couldn't do that and that they were profiting off of lives, which is no different from any other business when you think about it, right? I mean, lawyers still do it, even though lawyers run the business, and lawyers decided this. And so they put a lot of restrictions on doctors. And that was the first kind of chink in the authority of doctors in America. And then insurance companies became for profit. They used to be not for profit. And as insurance companies tried less and less to pay doctors and hospitals, it's been a bigger fight. I'm still in a lawsuit with one of the major insurance companies for over $2 million.
Yeah.
And just this work we did, work my practice did that we never got paid for. And so we're still, trying to get that money, and, we're owed it. So, we have to really fight for it in America to get paid. Yeah. And so with all of that and the stress of being in a hospital and having someone's life in your hands, and then if you make a mistake, people die when you make a mistake. Failure in medicine is not, it's not the same as like having a failed launch. it's much higher stakes. And so, but the other thing is that because they made it illegal for doctors to organize, like doctors can't have a union or anything, what happened was that doctors became very, very, very territorial and competitive. And so anytime a new person comes into someone else's territory, it was kind of like eating their young. And so when I was a resident or maybe a medical student, a NICU, so neonatal intensive care unit doctor, said to me, "Your worst enemies are going to be other doctors." And I poo-pooed him. I said, "That can't possibly be true." Yeah. And lo and behold, that was probably the best advice I ever got. And it was hard. It was really, really hard trying to navigate and try to understand the politics that people will say things to your face that aren't true. And then, come back and I never understood that. And that may be, maybe I'm different that way, but like I say something, I'm going to follow through and do it. That's just how I am.
How refreshing.
Yeah. I don't understand how somebody can say that to your face and then immediately, backtrack or call you up and say, "Oh no, I can't do that." Or, yeah. So
you have this moment, you've got this business, you finally got wealth. You are a highly competent doctor. You then are at burnout. What happened and how long did it take for you to realize that you were just done?
Yeah. I think that it was starting in 2019, 2019, the middle of 2019, late 2018, it was just becoming really overwhelming. And one of the things that I was training a lot, I was doing a lot of running, I was cycling, I was swimming, and I kind of hit a plateau because I wasn't able to sleep the way I wanted to. And the desire I had was, I just want to sleep at night. That's all I want. I just want to sleep at night. I don't, and I was taking a lot of call. I was taking like 10 call days a month, which could be up to, 10 days of not sleeping, which is a third of the month, And so, and when you're tired like that, that can lead to mistakes. And it just, I just got really tired of it. And I was like, I just don't want to live like this anymore. And even if I had changed my business model, I still would have had to take call. And so at the end of the day, I waited and I was like, no, I just can't do that. And then the pandemic happened. And I'm in New York, and New York got the biggest and worst hit of the pandemic at the very beginning. And what happened was our hospital got filled up with COVID patients and none of them were surviving. and it was demoralizing. And as a surgeon, I was just going in and we do something called a central line for people who don't have venous access. And with people in early stage, when COVID first came, there was a lot of clotting of the blood, which was causing organ failure. And these people needed dialysis and they needed venous access. And so I was doing these and I was doing, 7 or 10 of them in 2 hours or something. It was a lot of people and nobody was surviving. And it was, and then I'd come home and take off all your clothes in the garage and go take a shower. And it was just like, and it was just bad. And then I think the worst thing for me was the Gestapo-like tactics of the hospital to, really monitor going in and coming out. And I was like, this is not how I want to live my life. And that was when I decided that I was done. And it was, I think, July of 2020 is when I'd finally just closed it all down.
So when you closed it all down, then you must have just had one of those, wow, what's next moments, and like pretty significantly. Did you need to have a break just to refresh yourself to actually find out what that is? What does a woman do after a journey like this to suddenly go, oh my gosh, now I know you've got the menopause movement.com, but what actually happened next?
Actually, menopausemovement.com is going away. And let me just explain what was happening. I went all in on Menopause Movement. And I really, menopause was a time of self-discovery. I had an existential crisis and as a doctor, I had such a hard time finding any information about it. And I said, there's got to be a way to help people. But I'm talking to business people, right? And so in trying to target menopause specifically, what I found was that the women that would come to this were either, they just weren't people like me. They were housewives. They were chronic pain people. They were people who liked to complain a lot. And it just wasn't, it wasn't the kind of people I wanted to work with. And so while I still have menopausemovement.com and it's still up and there's old podcasts there, I have really shifted because I realized that at the end of the day, I don't really care about menopause. What I care about is the opportunity to relaunch your life. And menopause gives us that. Midlife gives us that. But not only that, there's opportunities all throughout. And anyone who's a high performer has the opportunity at any time to relaunch because we're always thinking about how to get better.
I absolutely believe that 100%. And I just love that concept. And I see that day in, day out with those that I coach around the world, that you can just choose. It's a choice, right? You often think I don't have choices or I've missed an opportunity, and you might have missed, 50 opportunities, but you can make that choice to, have a new narrative in your journey from tomorrow, from today. And so you can actually have that pause, which, menopause obviously definitely does, when you suddenly start getting hit with some significant symptoms and you go, oh my gosh, it can be very, very confronting, and can be that pause, but it doesn't have to be. It can actually just be stages of transition, right? You could have just got divorced, or one of your kids could have moved out of home, or, or you could have just gone through the pandemic and then went, oh my gosh, now my life's already a mess, with maybe I'll just start a business or do something else. Right. So what was your main learning then? So you tried thought it was going to be just around menopause, but then as a doctor, it doesn't surprise me. It's actually a whole holistic concept, isn't it? But now,
you know what, I was at first businesses so I had my surgical practice, but doing an online business is very different, right? Because in surgery, people come to you, they're sick. Okay. They need you, right? And that'll never go away. Robots are never going to be able to replace what we do.
Yeah.
And so it's a recession-proof job. And in some ways, I'm kind of sad that I left it right now. But in other ways, I know that if I hadn't, I know how I would feel. And I didn't like feeling that way. And so it was the right decision for me. But with Menopause Movement, I think that the best way to describe it is it was a great experience in trying to start something.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's women in the menopause movement, and they'll be with me forever. I love them, and they're, they've all had these major transformations. But at the end of the day, I realized that what I was teaching was, how to master yourself, how to make change in your life the way that that works, because we all want change. We all it's just really hard to make it happen. We all think about change a lot. And in the change spiral, so there's like this change spiral, but there's thinking about change, and then there's taking action, and then you go back to thinking about change and then taking action, and you kind of go up this spiral. And the whole idea was for me to compress that spiral by supporting women, and now anyone, really high achievers. I'm looking at high achievers like people like me, like doctors and lawyers, C-suite executives, and entrepreneurs, and are the people that I can help the most. And in my beta course, which was called Launch Your Life, everyone who was in there got major transformations, and they were from all different walks of life, but all were entrepreneurs. And I had one woman who was a private chef and was just restarting her business, who got enough confidence to just go out there and fill her practice. We had an 8-week course, and she filled her practice. And that's just one example. And so I think that what I'm most interested in is self-discovery. And so letting go, the first business feels like a baby, right? And you're a business coach, so you understand, like, when somebody has to just kill their business and restart, they don't see it, and you try to tell them, and they don't want to hear it, and this is like the universe pushing me into the next thing. But it's been a really hard time. And so, did I take a break? You asked me before, and the answer was no. I jumped in with 2 feet for 2 whole years working on menopause movement, and I had some mild success. I mean, not what I wanted or what I hoped for, but I paid some of the bills, and it was okay. But then I realized that it just wasn't what I really wanted, and I had kind of created a job for myself. And so I took a break, and I drove across the country. So in February, I drove from New York to California, and then I came back in April. And during that time, I really kind of I did some things for menopause movement, but for the most part, I started thinking about what's next and how I want to make things happen. And every once in a while, there's a time, I think there's a season where you can just pause, and there's an allowing that has to happen. And I know this sounds really woo, but I've realized that my business can only grow as much as I do. And any blocks that are in my business are because there's blocks in me. And so I have to really do a lot of my own self-discovery in order to be able to do what I need to do.
Yeah. It's the ultimate revelation, isn't it? I know a lot of people go, I want the business tip. I want the business tip. And a lot of it actually, sometimes it is required that, but a lot of the time it actually is with yourself, and it's the values that you haven't identified that you have, right? The boundaries that you have, the hopes and the dreams. Do you actually believe they're possible or not possible? There's so many things that will actually come up that need to be dealt with. And often high achievers that you're working with haven't drawn breath. They haven't actually stopped to actually clarify with themselves, who they are, who they're evolving to be, what their core is all about, right?
Yeah, it's really true. And when I look back at my life, I made a lot of things happen, right? I mean, I got into medical school. I, made a lot of money. I made a lot of things happen, but also a lot of things happened to me. And, from childhood trauma to having a son with cancer to having a really contentious divorce. And what happened from, and so, there's a lot of, everybody grows up with trauma. There's trauma. Everyone has trauma. Something happens. Right. And so what really matters is how we choose to react to it. And our reaction then produces whatever the outcome is. And what I realized, especially with my son's cancer, was that I was allowing things to just happen. And I had to start making conscious choices. And it wasn't really until, I would say 2008, maybe, when I really started looking into some of this self-help stuff. I got really deep into Jack Canfield and started realizing that if I don't take control of this, my life is just going to pass me by. And I'm going to be, 95 years old or 150 years old, however old I am, just saying what happened and why didn't I get what I wanted? And that was such a big revelation for me. It was like, well, wait a minute. This is what I want. I need to start going after that. And there was a time where I would write, 10 times a night, everything I wanted. and some of those things I got, some of those things I didn't. But at the end of the day, we have to keep a positive mindset. And that, I think, is why I have Launch Your Life, because if you're an entrepreneur and you want to grow your business, again, it's only going to grow as much as you do. And if you don't uncover the blocks that are happening, and I'm not talking about, I don't do deep trauma work with people, and sometimes that's required. But what I do is show you how to look at life in a way that you don't have to suffer. And man, that was the biggest revelation for me, was that, oh man, it's an optional, suffering is optional.
Yeah. Suffering is optional. It's an incredible concept, and a lot of people will go, really, really, but it is, it is the way it is. But you're saying in your course, in your experience, it's actually, it's your mindset. It's how you respond to that suffering.
It's not just that. I mean, suffering comes from meaning, right? So the circumstance that happens, whatever it is, the event is just a neutral occurrence. It happened. And we can respond to it in a way that, whatever the response is going to produce the outcome. But also when we put the story to it, that's where the suffering happens. So we can either put, like, we can say this thing is really bad and then we're going to suffer, or we can say, I don't know, and there's this, I recommend to everyone to go and watch this talk by Eric Edmeades called The Hindsight Window. And it's a 20-minute talk, as it was one of the Mind Valley events. And he just talks about how when an event you first perceive as negative, the sooner you can make it a positive, the less you're going to suffer. And he tells an example of having everything in his car stolen, and how he started to see almost immediately how this was a good thing for him and his wife. I won't spoil it, but it's really worth watching. And so I think that when we start to really realize, and this is, we go deep into this in my teachings, but when we start to really realize that those bad things that happened to us are probably some of the best things that ever did happen to us, because they shaped us. And for me, with all the trauma and all the abuse and all the awful things that happened, my son's cancer, everything, I would say that I would not be who I am. I would not have the resilience I have if I had not experienced those things. And so for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah. And I thank you for sharing that so clearly, because that's it exactly with hindsight. I know, in my journey, that's right. When you're in those moments, you just go, oh, it's just so hard or so challenging, or why me, or, all that sort of thing. And then when you look back, you go, oh, well, because of that experience, I toughened up. I got a bit more resilient. I did this and that. Not that we want to suffer just to grow, but life will throw curveballs, as we know, and most of them unpredictable. And so that's one of the secrets of success, isn't it? That's one of the principles that I coach people on, of failing fast, I call it. So if you have a situation, those people who are successful actually get better at turning it around. They do it quicker. So instead of staying in the well and dwelling on all of the negative, they go, this is pretty bad. So what am I going to learn from it? How am I going to grow? How am I going to navigate around it? How am I going to do these things? So absolutely fascinating. I know you've got a survey that you're going to want people to be part of. I'd love you to tell everyone about that survey. For those listening in, I will be posting the link to that survey on all of my platforms. But how about you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I'm doing some market research, and it really is just a series of open-ended questions asking you about your experience in, with resilience and with burnout. And I'm really looking to find out what your experience is. So it's really I just want your advice. And I'm going to be picking about 9 people to speak to directly and help them get, so it's called the Relaunch game plan call, but it's just to help people really get clear on what the next steps are for relaunching your life now. And I'm 57 years old, and I pivoted in my 50s, and it's never too late. And that's if you leave this talk with nothing else, just know it's never too late. There's never a time that you can't make a pivot. And so if you could go and fill out that survey, it's discover.drgordon.me, and that would be great. And it'll take you to the whole thing. It'll probably take you 15 minutes to fill it out.
Okay, so give yourself some time. Is it just women? It can be men and women?
Oh, it's anyone. I'm
Anyone.
open to, yeah. I mean, in my last cohort, I had a couple of men, and it was great. That's the other thing is, I just really wanted to get a male perspective after working with women for so long. It's nice to have some men, to be able to interact with men.
Fantastic. So we'll ask men and women to.
Yeah.
You can get yourself a cup of tea, 15 minutes, do this survey. It will be absolutely fantastic, so that, Dr. Michelle can actually, I'm assuming quality improve, your programs and your services. Yeah. They're more pinpoint, and that's the best way that we do things, that we actually, not just because we design something and we actually think this will be really good. And I know I do that with my programs all the time. I actually ask everyone who's done something, been there, past experience, what could it be better, because you're wanting to just focus in, right, with whatever area that we're in. We always want to just be pinpoint in our focus. And,
I think that surveys and conversations are the best way to do market research. And since I'm really basically relaunching myself, I want to get your input. Also, I don't know if you know this, but I have a podcast.
Yeah. Tell us about the podcast.
So the podcast used to be called Menopause Movement, but we changed the name to Launch Your Life. And it's all about bouncing back from burnout. And so every week there's actionable tips to help your mindset so you can go out and crush it.
Absolutely crush it. What have been the biggest learnings that you have had from those that you've now coached? You've moved from medicine, just treating people. It's very process, very exact in its sort of science. And now you've moved into coaching, and you're meeting people of all diverse backgrounds, all diverse situations, age groups, and so forth. And they're also not going to be as prescriptive. They're having their own journeys, and you've got to help them move through that. What have been your biggest learnings through those times?
So I think one of the biggest learnings I can say is that community is really important. And I enjoy having a community, because while I may be positioned as the expert, there may be somebody in the community, because we're all adults, who can provide some really good words of wisdom. And the other thing is people really want to be heard. And so it's really about 80% listening and 20% talking, and the talking is mostly clarifying questions. And that has been really helpful for the people I coach. And then a lot of experience sharing.
Yeah. Finding that commonality, or that you're not alone, that other people have been through their version of an experience, but at least it makes you feel, connected in some way. I'm all about it takes a village, and I've definitely got my global tribe, and I just think it's just essential for everyone to be part of a community that they just feel a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness, and it doesn't mean you have to all be in that same space, but it's more the intention, isn't it? It's like I'm on a journey to, evolve and grow and learn from others, and to sort of find that part of myself. What are the biggest things that you've learned about identifying your values in your process?
It's been really interesting in terms of finding my values, because as I've been doing this online thing, I've had to do so much of my own personal growth. And what I realized, and excuse me, it was that I was a doctor because at 5 years old, I wanted to please my mom, and it wasn't about me at all. And and it was sad and great at the same time. But it's like, did I waste my life? I mean, I was a great surgeon, and I'm still a high achiever, so that'll never go away. And I guess the other thing is that in terms of, as I left medicine, I had to kind of re-identify with myself. And, somebody said to me, "You used to be a doctor." And I said, "No, I'll always be a doctor." I earned that,
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, everyone calls me Dr. G, and that's, I'm Dr. G, and that'll never go away. Right. But, the I think for me, the biggest value that I have shifted is the value of having my time and my freedom. And what I'm working toward is kind of like a nomad, internet nomad life. I want to do that for a while because I really love photography, and I like taking pictures of the Milky Way and stars and stuff like that. And I just want that freedom to be able to go and take pictures at the best places in the world.
Beautiful. What a great dream. And I love it. And I bet that idea sort of happened while you were driving across the country of, you know what, I'd love to just stop and take some photos, or to just have time, have freedom. And I think when you felt trapped in a situation, a career, for you, a career could be a relationship, could it just be an ongoing stressor? It can be when you have that pause, if you like, to actually go, that's right. What does balance look like for me? What does success look like for you? Which is very different. That's right. From unpacking that and going, oh my gosh, like I actually just did follow this route to please my mom or whatever. And many of us have had that sort of journey. And so that's right. But once again, you can say, oh, well, have I wasted it? No. You're Dr. Michelle, you are a doctor, you have contributed in that way. You could still at any time then go back and work if you wanted to, in that way. Or you know what, there's many other things that you can get involved in and grow, and you can now help other people through your journey. So I absolutely love that and honor that it's a bold move. It's a bold thing to actually, bold and brave, right? To go into the unknown. So talk about, for those of you listening in who go, oh my gosh, like, I go and say, push your comfort zones. Dr. Michelle has actually just gone and leapt. She's leapt out of a comfort zone into a whole new world. And I also love your story of what you're sharing, because, even as a, highly successful practitioner, you've also go, you know what, I tried something and it wasn't, you learned a lot along the way. It doesn't have to be that when you then choose one thing, it has to be it. Other people would say that. They'd go, oh, because you've now left it, you've made this massive decision and left medicine, whatever you do has to be successful. Whereas the success isn't always on the actual business. The success sounds like, from this conversation that we're having, is what's actually happened to you, and how you've actually grown through that and are getting clarity around where you actually believe your truest value will be.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, there's so much that's an inner game, right? I mean, I tell the women that I work with that, like weight loss is an inner game. You can cheat it a little bit if you want to get an operation or something, but at the same time, if you don't change your state of being, you're going to go back to doing the same behaviors that you had before. And so, it's weight loss is truly a behavior change. And it's really hard to hear that, because we don't want to take responsibility for the fact that it's our behavior that's causing us to put on the weight. Sometimes it's medical. I'll say that, but that's just one example. And, I wanted to say that I have one of my mentors says, you win or you learn. Right. And, you do a launch, and if it fails, it's like, what can I learn from it? And the faster you learn from it, the faster you can iterate. And I will say, because I've had some moderate success with Menopause Movement, it's hard, because I'm thinking, well, maybe I can evergreen it. Maybe I can do, and I keep thinking about this. And at the end of the day, most likely I have to, probably let it go. But it's hard. It's hard on something that I've worked on for so long, to let go.
It's hard to let it go. And it's also, that's right, when you've poured your heart and soul into it, or even those listening in, and you've just done a lot of work, right? It's just a lot of hours, so there can be the personal attachment to it. And then sometimes it's like, oh, I've just done all this work. I don't want to then just give it all away. But then there's always other opportunities. Someone also might want to take that on and then still give it life. Someone who I know, I actually woke up early this morning because I went to a book launch on a menopause book, which was really interesting. One of my girlfriends was launching. And so what funny timing to be having this conversation. But it can be that, someone else who that's their passion, that's their business, then they take it on. It's a bit like, it's like selling a business. You can sell a website and to give that to someone else. So you don't always have to lose. And sometimes you can actually just say it was a good chapter and then that chapter's finished, right? It's all part of the evolution. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on my program today. Everybody, make sure you go and click on the link that I'm going to have with our platform, on my platforms, to do that survey for Dr. Gordon. It would be just so helpful for her that you can see she's trying to make sure that the program that she develops is seriously state of the art, just absolutely the bee's knees for people who are, going through stages of transition that they want to do without the stress, without the overwhelm, definitely without the burnout. And not only just not with the negatives, actually with all of the positives, right? So, we can sometimes go, well, I don't want all those terrible things. You know what? I want everyone to thrive. I want everyone to blossom. And I know you do as well. And so how does it actually help people to reach their potential and to continue thriving in their whole self through these times? I'm looking forward to the feedback that you get from those survey completions. And I thank you for being on my program today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.